In this video, we're going to be live coding an application. So I've done a few videos like this before, and the basic idea is that I just have a general idea of what I want to build in my head, but I haven't really done any preparation or research for this. So we'll just walk through issues as they come, and we'll try to build a simple example of an application. And so the general idea for this came from just those party drinking game type apps. Me and my friends used one of those recently when we went to the Gold Coast, and it can be quite a lot of fun to play. They ask truth or dare style questions, get people to vote on things, that kind of stuff. A bit of icebreaker type stuff, I guess. But I had the idea just to develop my own version of one, mainly because I feel like the pricing of these apps maybe take advantage of the fact that people have been drinking when they're playing them. So I thought it'd be cool just to host like a PWA of just a simple party game style app. But I also think it provides just some interesting stuff to walk through on video as well. And so basically what I want to build is an app that will display a question or prompt on screen. It'll set a different background color for each question, and it will just randomly cycle through those as you click. So you can just kind of endlessly click on the screen, and it's going to cycle through different questions and display them on the screen. And so the interesting thing about that is that it means we'll have to load up some data. So we'll probably be making a HTTP request to load some data. We'll have to figure out how to change the background color dynamically. So we'll probably do that using CSS variables. And we're also going to need a way to randomly cycle through those questions. So with that said, let's just jump into trying to code this thing. So I've already generated a blank Ionic application. And I think what I'm going to do first is just set up some dummy data. I'm also going to get rid of this header section because we're just going to have just the content section. And we'll get rid of this boilerplate stuff here as well. So yeah, I think a good first step will be trying to display some dummy data on the screen. We'll cycle through some questions by clicking in the Ion content area. So let's switch over to our home page here. And eventually we'll probably load in this data from the JSON file or something like that. But for now, we'll just code it directly into the home page because we're really just trying to work on a bit of a prototype, I guess. So I'm going to set up the on init hook here. And we'll set up a, say, an array to hold our questions. So say public questions. We won't worry about defining an interface just yet. Actually, no, let's do that. That'll be, it's a good way to sort of define what our data is going to look like. And it's better to do these things now rather than probably to put it off till later and then maybe never do it. So let's say we'll create a separate interfaces file here. So I'm going to create a new folder for interfaces. And then I am going to create a question interface. And so the point of an interface is basically to just define the structure of your data. So you're basically making your own type so you can enforce that particular data structure. So I'm going to say export interface. We'll call this question. Let's call it party question just to be a bit more specific. And we are going to have for each question, we'll have the question itself. So let's just say we'll call that question, and that's going to be a string. And we'll probably have a specific background color for each question. We could either set a random background color for each question or have a specific background color assigned to a particular question. I think I like that better because then you can, I don't know, maybe have a bit of a theme. Certain questions will be certain colors. So we'll just call this background, and that's going to be a string as well. Okay, now with that interface defined, we can import that. So we're going to import a question from interfaces question. Oh, I didn't call that question, did I? What I called it? Party question. Import party question from there. And then we're going to use that as a type on here. So this is going to be an array of party questions. So say party question, and we'll just set it to be a blank array to begin with. And so eventually, like I said, we're going to load up the questions from somewhere, maybe from a JSON file eventually. But for now, let's just set up some dummy data here. So say this.questions equals, this is going to be an array. And then, as I mentioned, each question is going to be it's going to have the question itself and a background color. So I'll just use a placeholder for now. So let me just check. So what was question? So say question, and this can be, I'll just say question 1. Because I can't be bothered thinking of that just yet. And the color, no, it was called background, wasn't it? Background can be, we'll make this just black for now. So I'm just going to copy this out a few times. And basically, I just want to check that the general idea is working fine, and then we can work on building this out a bit better. So just change this to 2, 3, 4. And we'll change that one to white, this one to like a gray color. And I don't know, this one can be black as well, that's fine. And so we have our questions there, and we also are going to need a way to, I guess, select or set the currently active question. So I'll create a separate class member for that, and we'll call this active question. That's going to have a type of just a single party question. And now we're going to need to create some kind of method to set the active question. So we'll create a method here called, why not, set question. And eventually we might decide to move some of this stuff out into its own provider to separate some of the logic out of this page a little bit. But for now, we'll just do it in here, and we'll figure that stuff out later. And so basically, I just want to set the active question randomly to any one of these. So I should be able to do that by saying this dot active question equals this dot questions. And let's, I'll set this out into its own variable here to make this a little bit clearer. So I'll say let selected question equal, we're going to use a random integer here. So we should be able to select a random integer between, we want between 0 and 3 to randomly select one of the, the currently, the current questions in our questions array. So we should be able to do that with we do math.floor, math.random times the length of the array. I think that should work. So basically, the math.random will give us a random integer, or rather a random number between 0 and 1. And then we're using floor to round that down to the nearest whole number. And by multiplying math.random by the length of the array, that, if we had, if math.random gave us 0.6, then we times it by 4, or say 2 or something like that. So if we had 0.6 times 2, that gives us 1.2, and then flooring that will give us 1. And so this should give us a random integer between 0 and 3, hopefully. Unless I'm figuring this wrong. Maybe we'll have to Google search that later, but we'll go with that for now. If we start running into problems, we'll fix it up. So now we'll be able to set this.active question to this.questions selected question. And hopefully that works just fine. So we'll just initially set this, and we'll call that the first time we run the code, because we need to set an initial question. So we'll call this.set question. And we'll check now in the browser and probably see some errors. Okay, so it says compiled successfully. So everything does seem to be working so far. Obviously, we've got nothing on the page yet. So let's display the active question on the page. So we should be able to come into here, and we'll just use an interpolation, and we'll use the active question here. So say active question dot question, was it? Yes. Okay, so save that, and we'll see if we have a question. Question 1, perfect, exactly what we want. So now we've got a way to display one question on the screen, like an initial question. Now we want to display a different question every time we click. So we should be able to just attach a click method to the Ion content itself. That's how I want this to work. I'm not sure if I've actually done that before, but I don't see why it shouldn't work. So we'll set up this event binding here of click to our set question. So we'll call that. And since an Ion content isn't meant to be tapped, we'll add the tappable property here, or attribute, so that it doesn't have the tap delay on mobile devices. It's not the best way to use this. We might change this in the future. It's better to use elements that are meant to be clicked, but this should work for now. So we'll just test that that does indeed work. Okay, so it seems to, as I click, it is cycling between questions. Hopefully, I haven't run into any errors yet, and I'm just wondering if my math.random was wrong or not, but we seem to be able to get every question, and we're not running into any errors or anything like that. So it's probably right. So we'll just trust that it is for now. Okay, so let's just style this a little bit to begin with. So I don't know, we'll just put this inside of an H3 tag. Actually, before we get into messing with the styling too much, let's just handle the background color first. So I doubt I'm going to be able to have enough time to do everything. So I'm going to focus on the important stuff here. And so what we want to do is basically set the background color to whatever's in here every time we run this set question. And so we can do that by using CSS variables with Ionic. That's how Ionic styles their components, of which Ion content is a component here. And CSS variables can be changed dynamically. They can be changed at runtime. So we should be able to just change the background color as a CSS variable and have that change for us. And so I've actually written a tutorial on a theme switcher service, I think. So just to make sure we're doing this correctly, I'm going to just look up that tutorial now. Search for switcher. I think I wrote this tutorial. Yeah, there we go. So I've forgotten how I went about doing it at the time. So let's just see. Yeah, so we're just using grabbing the document element here and setting a particular variable to a certain value. So we're going to do the same thing in our homepage. And again, you can see here we're using in this tutorial, I'm using a theme switcher service, which is I'm using a provider, which is separate to the page, which is a good thing to keep this stuff separate. For now, I'm just going to do it in the page itself, just because I'm not going to have enough time to do everything properly here. So I'll probably have another follow-up video where I'll finish this stuff off, maybe improve things a little bit. I'm going to need that inject as well, because we want to inject the document into the page. And you can see here we're injecting both the DOM controller so we can perform those DOM writes efficiently. And we're also injecting the document, so we're not just grabbing the global document object, we're grabbing it in I guess an Angular friendly way. So let's add a constructor and inject those in there. And again, we're just going to copy the code from here. And we have to modify a little bit to do what we want. So we don't need this for each. We don't need a loop through anything here. So I'll just remove that. And we'll just have document element style set property. And now this is the variable we want to change, which we'll have to look up, I guess. And then we want to set that to the background of that question. So we'll say this.active question.background. And now to see what the variable we want to change is, I can just come back into our app here. So we're trying to change the background color on this Ion content. So if I just search for background, we can see Ion background color is currently set to white. That's FFF. So we should be able to just modify that. Ion background color, set that to whatever the background value is for the particular question. And hopefully that will work. Maybe. All right, so it looks like that's working. See, it's gray. if I click through other questions, it's cycling through different colors, which are basically white, black, and gray, which is obviously not entirely pretty. So let's go to flatUIcolors.com. This is a website I use when I just want some, test colors to work with. They just have some pretty defaults we can use. So let's go copy a few of those, and we'll just use those in here. So what I just use turquoise. We'll try this Peter River, wisteria, and sunflower. Now we're probably also going to want the color for these questions to be white as well. So let's just set a style in here for H3. We'll just set that to white so they stand out a bit. See what that looks like. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Okay, so we've come pretty far so far. We have pretty much something pretty close to what we want in the end. This is the basic idea where we're just able to click and tap through various questions randomly. They'll display on screen. We have cool, background colors showing. I'm probably going to cut this lesson or this video off here. We're going to finish this up in a part 2, I think. I don't think I have the battery power available to finish this off entirely, and I don't want to rush through the rest of it. So what we do want to finish up after this lesson is we want to load in questions from a JSON file, or from maybe even from a server somewhere or something like that, rather than just hard coding them into the page. And also we want some real questions as well, so so we can see what it's going to look like if the app is really being used how it's intended. Maybe you can leave some suggestions for questions, or I don't know, dares or whatever that I can add to this. And so basically, we just need to load in those questions from an external source, add a bit of styling. Obviously we want this centered and the questions displaying fully. Maybe we'll add a text shadow or something to the questions, and then maybe we'll also refactor this code a little bit. It might be worthwhile separating this stuff out into its own some kind of question service that the homepage can call. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed part 1 of this video. I'll likely release part 2 for next week's video. So if you want to see that, feel free to subscribe. If you like this style of video, please do like the video. It's a little different to what I usually do, I guess. So yeah, it would be great to know if you do enjoy this kind of, I guess, haphazard playing around, just messing around with code style video. If you want to check out my website, the tutorial I mentioned, my Twitter, stuff like that, I'll have links in the description. But otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.